So, welcome to another episode of Uplift and Up Shift. I'm joined today by my co-host, Kenny Lange. Hey, Kenny, how we doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. We are really excited. We get to talk to McKenzie Decker today. Welcome, McKenzie.
Hi.
I am so excited just because I've already heard so much about you. We had never met, but your name is really well known to a lot of the people I spend time with. I am a fan already. And when I read your bio, which I'm going to read because everyone needs to know just the kind of caliber of person we have on today.
And that you can read.
And that I can read. That's also impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So McKenzie is the co-founder and COO of System and Soul, a business operating framework for companies that love their people. McKenzie is passionate about helping leaders champion the dignity of the people they serve and enabling individuals to unlock their unique genius in their work. Along with running organizations' day-to-day operations and serving as a strategic thinking partner, she's contributed to the Clarity Field Guide, must read, Renegades, and the System and Soul podcast, all things you should be aware of if you are not already listening to them or watch or involved in. And in her free time, she enjoys cooking, gardening, hiking with her husband, Jake, who apparently sends a lot of emails, and playing fetch with their overly energetic yet adorable dog, Sable. Welcome, McKenzie.
Thank you. Might be here too at some point. We'll see.
We would welcome a Sable visit. Now, McKenzie, we prepped you a little bit, but we didn't tell you all we were going to share with you. We have our 3 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
My hands are sweating. Yes, I'm ready.
Good. All right. First question. Who's a business mentor you would love to shout out and give a little extra love to?
So locally, there is someone, I don't even know if she knows that she's a mentor, and maybe that makes someone a great mentor to begin with, but her name is Heather Fortner. She is the CEO of a financial management group called Signature FD here in Atlanta. I think being a mentor is sometimes accidental, and she's one of these people that just I know her through this business that we're running, and she is just, I'm sitting on the sidelines of her career and watching her do her thing, and she is such a good leader. She's one of these types of leaders that makes anyone she's talking to feel like they're the only person in the world, but she's also running a 150 person business, with billions of dollars that they're managing. It's a huge business with high stakes problems and decisions to be made. And she shows up so present with the people around her. And I think that's such a skill, and I admire her for that.
Wow. That's pretty unbelievable. I want to talk more about how you make that feeling happen for your people and be present for them. I'm sure we can dig into that with you. And I would wager there are people who consider you a mentor, even if you don't know it, just the way you carry yourself. And again, what I've heard. Number 2, what's something you wish every small business owner, for profit or not for profit, knew?
I'm biased because this is the business that we're in, but I think if we really want to compete, or if we really want to serve people, however you want to look at what your business or organization does, we really have to be both mindful of how we systematically design the scaffolding that upholds the whole business, and really make sure that we take care of the soul of that business, which is the people, the culture, the identity that we represent, the identity that we stand behind, and how we differentiate ourselves. So I think both those things are equally important. I think it's incredibly hard, so a lot of people don't do it, but it's what I wish everybody knew, that we need both things. And it's okay to not be good at both. Maybe that's what they should know.
Ooh. We're gonna click into that later because we have to get to number 3 question. This is the one you are not prepared for.
Okay. All right.
Okay. And I want your opinion on this. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
A hot dog is its own category. It is not a sandwich.
Talk to us. Give us your perspective.
What would that category be?
Right. Okay, good. What is the category then?
The category is, oh my gosh. I just want you to know that this question came up 15, 18 years ago for me, in high school and college. This is something that the friends that I had at the time were debating for at least a whole year.
You've had a while to think about your answer and formulate a complete thought
and somehow,
around this.
No, somehow I blacked out every time that conversation was happening. So
Where were these conversations happening? If you were just for context, people, I know McKenzie. I've known her for a good long while. So don't think I'm just like, this is hard hitting investigative journalism and I'm going after McKenzie. I do not want your emails.
I think it's its own thing because it's joined at the bottom. Because it's a bun is not, that bun is more like a coat than it is.
Is that different than being joined at the hip? Joined at the bottom?
Well,
the bottom, whatever you, the hinge, the hot dog.
And
hot dog.
Like my opinion on this, I think it's a taco because just like taco, it's a V-shaped container upon which you layer meat. And
if you hold it like this, if I rotate it that way, then it's like a Pac-Man.
do you get the taco thing? The taco answer always
I didn't expect you to say that, but I think I agree with you that it's more of a vessel than it is like a stack. So it's.
Ooh, I dig that. Kenny, what are your thoughts? Final call. We lost him. We broke him.
I try not to think about hot dogs, is what I should have said. I try not to think about hot dogs at all.
Is that on your 2025 vision board? Like, I've resolved 2025 is the year. I no longer think
how too much talk about it in 24.
The existentialness of hot dogs.
It's more like, it's like, I think that it probably shouldn't exist.
The hot dog shouldn't exist?
Yeah, like there's a lot of better options for us out there.
Oh, so
and it's not just people should choose better options.
Right.
It's that this shouldn't even be an option to people.
I think so.
I think you're going to have a lot of vendors who love the 4th of July coming after you.
Yeah. I think Nathan's hot dog.
I want to drop this now. I want to drop this episode. We're going to bump her from the initial 3 and release this on July 4th.
Yep.
So Kyle, are we going to have to drop your like Ballpark Franks Hebrew National sponsorship that you just got for the podcast?
Well, this is going to be a real issue. I hope we can edit this part out or I don't know. Yeah,
we're going to have to cave to big hot dog.
Lined up. Why do you think we open with a hot dog question?
We answered a big hot dog in the hot dog lobbyists.
This wasn't in my notes.
Number 1 on food cart podcast listens is hot dog. So, well, gonna have to switch. No.
Golly, that tanked the whole thing. I'm not even in the right mindset to have this conversation anymore. I'm just kidding.
Speaking of losing the soul of something, can we switch to...
So I guess you're not Baptist. I'm just kidding. I didn't realize this podcast didn't believe in once saved, always saved, but that's cool. Keep going.
No. Well, if hot dogs are out, we know.
There is conditional love is the rest of the theme of this. I'm just kidding.
How can you show conditional love to your people in a way that gets them to do what you want them to do and not call it manipulation?
So when we talk about soulless entities and soulless corporations, how do we start that conversation and actually have a company? I love what you said. The soul of the business is the people and the culture. And maybe it'd be a really good place to start with the story of System and Soul. Because I have a feeling that's probably where like that became most clear. Like you probably already knew it, but you put the name System and Soul in there. So it feels like it was important.
Yeah, I want to say it all started with a hot dog, but I'll get serious and answer the question.
There was a napkin involved, I think.
Hey, maybe the napkin held the hot dog and then you started to draw up some ideas on the napkin.
Well, that didn't happen. But what did happen is, so I guess this was 4 years ago, but I guess more than 4 years ago, there was this kind of period of time where with me and my business partners, we were recognizing that. So we were working in like leadership training, business coaching, recognizing that with the clients that were being served, some of these clients being new clients, some of these clients being clients that had been around for 3-4 years, what they had, the tool set that they had was only helping them get so far. There's only so much that they could do with the knowledge and the skills that they were gaining before they hit a wall. So we saw that and we're like, what if instead of just teaching people tools on how to run their business, we taught them like, it's not just like it's a behavior change for these teams, but it's like a mindset change and like a belief system change. And so it became a question, like we were wondering, like, what would that look like? And then about 4 years ago, we're like, why don't we just go build that thing? Because we can see that businesses need it. They need an intense belief in what they're doing. They need clear vision in what they're doing. They need the right people to come along for the ride. And then they need a great like framework to support all of that work. And so what we did is we named the business System and Soul because it's a set of tools, and I call it like a set of tools and conversations around developing the effectiveness of the systems within the business. So how we organize work, how we get things done, how we have accountability and alignment, and then the soul, which is all about like how do we care for our people? How do we have real alignment around the why of what we do every day and give everybody a place in the story? How do we demonstrate values in the process of doing the work that we do? And so all of those things we have seen over and over again that run companies work on being good at both of these things. Are they good at both of them out of the gate? No. It would be unfair to think that we'd be, perfect at either side of that coin coming out of the gate. But we do see that it doesn't just create a healthy, growing business, but it creates one that it's like an irresistible business, like one that people want to be a part of and one that people feel highly aligned to.
Wow. I had never heard how that kind of came together, and I'd never heard of it in that way, especially the soul part being just as equally focused on as the systems. So I think there is an imbalance that I've seen where it is one or the other.
Yeah.
Not a both and.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a line that's used, and for the listeners, full transparency and disclosure, I am a System and Soul certified coach. If this is your first episode,
I am not, and I am pro hot dog. For full disclosure, I'm pro hot dog.
Yes, all of these sort of like stances will be in the show notes. But one of my favorite lines that I get to use to articulate that, and I don't know, McKenzie, who originally wrote it, if it was you or if it was Benj or Chris, but the system makes the soul side true and the soul side makes the system matter. And for most people that I say that to, they go, oh yeah. And that sort of like clicks. One client in particular cites that as the moment that she knew she wanted to implement System and Soul after having tried a couple of different systems. And they're a large nonprofit and have tried a bunch of different ones. But that system making the soul side true is just, for me, because I do work with so many nonprofits, and Kyle, you and I have talked about this like off recording, I would say off camera, but off recording, is just we see so many great organizations with the best intentions self-sabotage or just not step into what was possible for them because they either didn't want to sell out, they didn't know how, or they felt like it would make the soul side inauthentic. And instead of just setting intentions around and discipline around those great soul side conversations, relationships, culture, way of being. And then on the other side, the soul side making the system matter is people talk about soul, like you were saying, soulless organizations all the time is when change is made for change's sake. When people say, oh dear God, okay, what fresh hell is this? We're making another change. We're doing this. Oh, great. Another happy hour, or just some, change to the comp plan, but there's no, to get all Simon Sinek on it, there's no why behind it, or at least not a compelling one. It's just for this reason, or it's cited purely for economic reasons, which are not unimportant, but cannot be solely important.
Love where this is going. I didn't know where our conversation was going to go. So I love that where this is going because our audience is for-profits and nonprofits. And what I've sometimes watched, and I'm going to talk about my wife because she's one of the reasons why I started Second Gear Group. She runs her nonprofit. It's all soul. And it was the idea that I was helping her with systems to grow and increase her impact. And that's when I was thinking about building Second Gear Group. It was, how do we give access to these nonprofit owners and nonprofit leaders who are focused, that they lose out on the systems. And I feel like the sellout or the coldness that systems sometimes bring isn't as appealing in some of the other tools available. And so for you guys touching on both is beautiful. And it's true for profits. And so I want to wrap my point with this and ask you, McKenzie, about it, but there are just as many for-profits that want to make money and meaning. And I feel like that's a really good way to describe maybe your approach, maybe people who will be drawn to what you guys do. And maybe you could talk about what that's like when you work with either a for-profit or a not-for-profit and make money and meaning. I see you guys writing down, so I hope that was a good one for you.
Yeah, I'm not. No one's ever said that before, Kyle, to me anyway. So I think you should trademark that. That's good. Money and meaning.
I think I got it from someone else. Just open it up, but I can't remember who off the top of my
But maybe we could trademark it faster than they can.
That feels a little soulless, if I'm being honest.
I don't know. That just feels capitalistic, but continue.
I don't know if I remember the question.
I have a feeling those are the people that are drawn towards you. And
yeah.
What is the reaction like when you talk about system and soul? And I love the piece that's bridging it for me is the conversation, because I think they want to have the conversation with their people, not just show them tools. Maybe talk about when they have the eureka moment.
Yeah, and Kenny's seen this firsthand too as a coach. It's exactly what you said. There's a lot of the teams that we end up working with, their backstory is some version of once upon a time there was a founder, someone who really cared about the thing that they wanted to go do, the problem they wanted to go solve, the thing that they wanted to build. And that person did that successfully. That person did it so well that they built a team and they created something of value that other people want to buy or other people want to donate money to, or whatever that may be, that economic driver. And they get to this point where it's like untenable. Like they are an untenable, meaning it could look like a couple of things. It could be they are sitting in the middle, like they are the gravitational pull, and there's all these people in the organization who are waiting for them to give them answers and waiting for them to give direction. And it's like a very short leash that they never really intended to create, but they want to be able to, they know if they want to keep growing and they want to keep creating impact, that they can't be the only one that carries the vision and makes decisions and moves the strategy forward. So they've got to find a way to mature the business, to elevate leaders within the organization and help them understand, like, here's our roadmap, here's how we get things done, here's how I want us to think about this business, and kind of like write the script. It's out of my head now, it's on paper, it's something that we share instead of it being something that all rolls back to that founder. And I feel like I got off on story time and I lost my train of thought, but there's there's that person. And I think oftentimes with that person, they care so deeply about, usually the people that we encounter usually really care about their people, and they really care about the culture that they've created because it's theirs. It's part of their heart is in the business. And like you said, like oftentimes bringing in, they see the need for the systems. Like they know that they could be more efficient or effective or productive or more organized because of that kind of that gravitational pull and that overwhelm and the bottlenecking and all of that. But like you said, I think that they get worried about, like, how is this going to change us? Because we love our work family or whatever. That's such a toxic thing. I probably shouldn't even say that, but we love like the environment that we've created. So we don't want it to get stale. And we want to be able to do for those founders and for their leadership teams is help put them at ease that we're going to have to work through some stuff that's going to be uncomfortable, but we're not going to destroy the thing that you made. We're not going to unravel the culture. We're actually going to try to like prop it up and create momentum with it, so that these things, like, help them understand that these things don't exist separately. Like, they fully support one another. What would you say to that, Kenny?
To that question, or to your story time, or just... I was going to ask you a question because all of a sudden I remembered I'm supposed to be an interviewer as well, but Kyle was already probably mentally prepared for this to be a
no, I do. It might end up being me being more facilitators, but this is good. Carry on.
I probably won't answer your question exactly, but there was something you said that highlighted something important, which is the in particular for founders, the founders fear that to get where they want to go, that somehow that means sacrificing everything that they are and what they like about the business they built. And
go ahead. Sorry.
I want to legitimize that fear, because I think humans, we are not these purely logical robots. And I'm saying that because I've been listening to a lot of podcast interviews of Ramit Sethi, who wrote the book And I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And he's talking about, money. Okay, it's just math, like it's this. He goes, but there's a whole psychology around this. So sometimes the thing that doesn't make any sense is the thing that we're doing repeatedly or that we want. And like we ignore that at your own peril. And I think we're applying the same sort of logic in the land of system and soul with these founders, which is there is a very real fear that I was good enough to get this thing to here. I'm not good enough. How I'm doing this, who I am, and who these people are is not good enough to take this any further. And so I have to admit that this is as good as I can possibly get. And I firmly believe that the framework and approach of system and soul is never asking that person, that founder, those leaders, because maybe it is more of like a founding team or something like that, or there were some early people onboarded that have just been there since the beginning. They're basically like the furniture in the office, that you can grow with these people and compete against what's possible and become more of who you are. I think it's if anything, I think it is a doubling down on who you are, which is a question I get asked a lot about, are you going to ask me to change everything? I was like, I don't know. It depends on your answers, bro, or ma'am, whatever. I tell people all the time, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I will ask you questions and I will tell you how to arrange those answers so it all makes sense. I will get what's in your heart and your head into the hearts and minds of your people so that you can run together and stop being like what you were describing, McKenzie, which is, I use the term chief everything officer in a lot of my materials and conversations and workshops. And when I say that, people are like, oh, yes, thank God that's me. Because ultimately, if you're a founder of a nonprofit, for-profit, whatever, and for the record, a nonprofit is the tax status, not a growth strategy. So cut that business out. Stop thinking, I'm so special. Yeah, you're special like everyone else. Stop it.
No margin, no mission.
Yeah, no margin, no money, no mission. Like if you're supposed to be going out and helping the most people, then you got to get over your ego. And that's a podcast for a different day. But I really do genuinely believe if we can tease those things out, give it a safe place to land, help them communicate it, then that change can happen. And it's actually them getting away from the best practices of all this other stuff. That's a regression to the mean. And that's not what we're here to do. Now, maybe truthfully, your business maybe it should stop at 50 million a year and you're just super healthy, great margins. You take great care of your people. You're sought after. You have a wait list. You have whatever. I talked to a lady earlier today and she's been growing her business for 25 years, which first of all, good Lord, that's an impressive achievement to make it a quarter century. But she got stuck at a moment where she said, all these friends I went to grad school with had more zeros at the end of their paycheck. They were working for these big name companies. They were doing all these things. And she called her dad and said, look, I feel like I enjoy the work. I'm a mother of two and I'm able to go and get them whenever I need to and do these things. But these other people, it looks like they're crushing it. And I don't feel like I'm in that same category, but I know that they're no better than me. Right? If you're a founder, you are competitive at some level. And if you say you're not, you're a liar. You can email Kyle all your angry emails about that. But I just think like the dad, I'll finish with this, but the dad came back and said, isn't that such a privilege though, that you have the flexibility that you're doing this? What is it you really wanted? And she goes, I wanted to make a decent living to where we felt safe, secure. We bought our groceries and I was a present mother. He goes, are you doing those things now? She said, yeah. He goes, so what does it matter if they have more zeros?
Yeah.
And I was like, dang. I was like, you got a good dad. Just defining success for yourself instead of letting the marketplace and everybody else and every other guru and thought leader and book writer and everything else. And all due respect to them, but none of them can define success for you or your organization.
I totally agree. And I think that's one thing that we want to do with the teams that we work with is it should be helping them head towards their definition of success. So sometimes that's doubling their revenue, and sometimes that's getting their founder, like helping their founder retire, or just getting them to a place where it's a sustainable $20 million business and they want to give back. We have one client that's part of their roadmap, is like they have a cap on what they want to earn every year, because they want to give away more than they earn. And it's unique to that team, and and that's what we want to help draw out, and that's what we want to help support, not slap, the stock system on top and hope it makes it better.
I want to click into personal, because the theme I keep hearing is how personal the approach feels, and how high. I said doubling down on who you are. I loved that concept. And Kenny, you talked about the fear. Starting a business is intensely personal, intensely scary, and there is a competitive nature to it. And so I'd love to get your guys' reaction to how you walk somebody through when they're seeing others with more zeros and thinking they have to be something more, and you get them to realize, hey, it was that intensely personal and scary decision you made that we have to double down on, potentially, to get you to that end state. And it may not be chasing the zeros, it may be over here. How do you guys think about that problem? Because it is intensely personal, and you are talking to that person. I feel the soul coming off the screen, which is an awkward thing to say,
but not the least awkward thing that's been said so far.
Yeah.
It's probably a dissatisfying answer to your question, but that answering the question, what do you really want, is so key. And it's impossible to answer for a lot of people. And it's usually, I think, our what we want, our desire for our businesses, is fully defined by what we see from everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does take some time to chip away at that. And I think it's a journey. It's a forever journey of dialing into what they really want out of it, that just requires a willingness to keep that in question and stay open to what those possibilities are. We talk a lot about inside of our framework that we teach, there's this idea of, we have a very specific definition of leadership. And leadership, and this is what we teach executives and their teams, that leadership it's not management. It's not learning how to lead other people. It's learning how to lead yourself well and be what we call inwardly sound and others focused. And that is a continual journey. Nobody shows up and is born being inwardly sound and others focused and is perfect their whole life. And it's like we get the opportunity to keep showing up and working towards that, and keep working towards that more whole version of ourselves that can answer the question of what we really want out of it in the most honest and transparent and candid and real way. So I think the answer is, it's a journey that they have to be willing to go on, and they have to already realize that they may not have that answer right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. Kenny, anything to add there?
I think McKenzie said it really well. The idea, or the word that was coming to mind, is it's another risk.
Yeah.
We think all the risk is taken when we start.
Right.
Yeah.
And because when we get started, all we're sharing is what we do, what we know how to do. We're a practitioner, a craftsman of something that we're able to do, and that allows us to get going and charge or fundraise or what have you. Someone starts asking you, what do you really want? If you're somebody who has started an organization, it's usually because you've been very productive. You're reading, you're learning, you're gleaning, you're being mentored, you're whatever. And all of these opinions of all these people that you really, really respect and admired, and whether they know it or not, have helped you get to the place that you are, their thoughts oftentimes are louder in your head than your own thoughts. And one, that makes for a really noisy place. And it's okay. When you get started, you need all the voices of these more practiced hands, so to speak, to get going. But then in order to keep going, and you dig in, and you need to hear more and more of your own voice, which is the signal amongst the noise that can be informed. It's like going from being data driven to data informed. right? Like my background's in agency world. Kyle, I know this
Yep,
is probably
we
something
speak
that
it.
if we haven't, we have talked about. Can we let the data inform it as opposed to just drive us so that we can take into consideration everything? And the thing we don't take into consideration oftentimes is ourselves. So either it is unclear because we've never paused long enough to really think about it, and it's been very noisy. The other part is it may represent a more significant risk, because we can be okay being judged for what we have done or not done or our results. But if we really say what we want from this business or what we want it to be, suddenly we're being judged for who we are. And that is the riskiest thing of all. That is the thing no one wants to, and especially in today's culture. If anybody tries to tell me that we're a more easygoing, grace-filled, understanding culture, I call BS. It is not. And then especially when you are a business owner or a founder, which most people do not understand. They don't understand that weight. They don't understand waking up with a panic attack, sweating at 3 a.m. because you're not quite sure how you're going to close that deal so you can make payroll while everybody else sleeps soundly and doesn't give a crap or barely checking in, right? Risking saying, here's what I would really love to have happen, because if it doesn't happen, or if it is rejected, then you are rejected. And studies have shown that when we feel rejection, like a lot of sales studies have shown, that the rejection salespeople feel on a daily basis registers as physical pain. I know sales trainers who will tell people to take Advil, aspirin, Tylenol, whatever, before they go on a run of sales calls, simply because it'll help them get through it, because of the way in which rejection affects us, not just at a psychological or a mental capacity or level, but at a physiological level. It freaking hurts. And that is the most dangerous thing that we could ever do. But that's why I love the work of Brene Brown so much, about vulnerability, about daring greatly. That's why she talks about it. It's not the man on the side judging. It's not this person doing blah, 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 blah. It is the man in the arena who's getting knocked on his ass.
That's a direct quote.
Yes. So that's where I think making your company be more of what it is at its core, its DNA, right? Which is what I feel like in the System and Soul framework, we are helping people articulate when we build a one-page roadmap, which the easy way to talk about it is, strategic planning, blah, blah, blah. That's cool. Yes, it is. But really, we're trying to articulate your DNA in such a way that everybody in the company can carry it, not just you.
Mm-hmm.
And that it attracts the people who are like that, and it repels the people who aren't. And by the way, that doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they're not a right fit. There's a lot of great spouses and partners out there in the world that probably could work for you, but there was one that you chose and you went with, right? Same thing. And I know that sounds weird to think about marriage or whatever inside of the context of working together, but if you really give a shit about what it is that you're doing, you're going to want that sort of commitment, because you're making that level of commitment to your people when they show up every day.
I'm glad you brought it up first, because I really think a lot of the work that we end up doing with a founder and a team, it's like couples therapy between those people in the business. You can probably think of like a company that is a really successful but not so nice company. There's a lot of companies out there that they don't really care about their people. They have high turnover, and they're still like a multi-million dollar business, and they get by on that. I think we're talking about a group of people that want something more than that. Like inherently they do. And maybe that's, Kenny, like what you're talking about. Like they want something more, and maybe they're even going to have to face rejection because of it. But I think of it's like being married. And maybe I think of it because we started this business and I got married like in the very same year. So it's kind of like all tracked together. But like we do therapy, and you can do it inside of a marriage. Like you can exist, like coexist, and get, move along in life and support each other on some level and have a certain level of happiness and satisfaction.
Yeah.
Like that can all happen. There are layers and layers and layers to be discovered with someone, just like there is with, a business. I think in the same way that doing that kind of therapy with a person is challenging and vulnerable and is uncomfortable, it's the same kind of work for a business. Like it is uncomfortable. It's hard. It requires something more of us than maybe we feel prepared to do.
Ooh, I like that. I sat down with a nonprofit recently, and the president, after we had been talking for about 30 minutes or so, and they were sharing their challenges and their goals, and I shared a bit about what I do, and she goes, "Oh, so you're like a company therapist." And
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, yes, yes." But you could do a whole host of these exercises and never really get to the root. You could just be treating the symptoms that you're frustrated with and never actually address what's causing it in the first place. I also had someone tell me that my coaching feels like being lovingly berated. So I'm still
Ah,
processing that.
Every time we
but yeah,
talk, I feel like that.
That's probably how my kids feel too.
Can we talk a little bit more about the cycle of risk? This is the words I wrote down, a cycle of risk, because I think it is
Ooh.
incredibly risky, right? We take the entrepreneurial leap into this world where, and I'm looking at entrepreneurs, right? Where this is entrepreneurs talking about entrepreneurs. And the first risk sometimes isn't as hard as the second risk. And I want to get deeper into that because in the start, it's the practitioner. It's something we're probably already pretty confident at doing. Maybe there's some scary parts of doing it by ourselves, but at the start, at least we know, like, worst case scenario, if I can get that first deal, I can probably make this work because I know this. But it's that second stage when there's somebody else depending on you. It's the third stage where it's, I have to say what I want because I've been so focused on everyone else, which is funny because you might think of business owners as selfish, but it's so everyone else focused. So can we talk about that, like, constant courage battle, that constant risk taking?
Yes. And I want to add a layer to your question and then throw it over to McKenzie, because as you were talking about that, it reminded me of the episode where I interviewed McKenzie for my podcast, and her big topic on that was about finding her voice. And that was, I think that really addresses something that we're talking about, because you've been in great environments like at the Maxwell Company. If you're unfamiliar with John Maxwell, welcome to planet Earth. And working with like Bench Miller and Chris White, who in entrepreneurial spaces have just these great reputations as these leader of companies and serial entrepreneurs. I think you have a great story about finding your voice and what you want to be and where you want to go and contribute as a leader. So we can link up that. So we'll link up to that episode if you'd like.
Link it up.
Lincoln logs. I don't know. Okay. I want to shut up now. But anyways, I really think that what you're saying, Kyle, connects with some things that McKenzie's articulated and walked through. And of course, now we're 2 years past when that got recorded. So it's probably even more rich.
Yeah, now I found my voice and I just yell at everybody all day.
She does. We're all very scared.
Thoughtful berating. That's my big takeaway.
That's why her dog hasn't come into the room yet.
For Sable.
Run, Sable, run.
You say her name too loud, she'll show up.
Happened with Jake as well, if we say his name. Okay. Jake, yes, ma'am.
Yes, that's how it works. Yeah. I think what you said, Kyle, is like there's this cycle of risk, and I like what you said about it. It's almost like the first risk is easier than the second risk and the third risk and the fourth risk. I fully resonate with that, because this has been creating System and Soul is my first entrepreneurial venture. Like any other part of my career, I worked in a larger organization and an established organization, which, like, newsflash for anyone who doesn't know, that doesn't give you any more security than being entrepreneurial. Like, I learned that. I'm like, oh, wait, what was I, it's all, there's no security in any of it. But I totally resonate with what you just said. Like, taking the big leap into getting the thing going is almost like it's really satisfying, even though it's painful. It's really satisfying because you're charging off on this adventure, and then you get to that next phase of proof of concept, or you get to that next phase where now it's not just you, it's you and 10 or 20 or 50 employees, and the risk is greater, the stakes are higher, and it requires things in us that have not been required before. Like in my case, so often there's people who are high performers who are excellent at the thing that they do, And then they go and they try to expand that beyond themselves. And that's a completely different skill set than being like a great technician or, or being excellent in your field of expertise. It's leading people and helping other people capture not just the competency of the thing that needs to be done, but do it in the same character and value system that you have, and be able to help them develop their capacity. Like all of those things are wildly different skill sets. And I think it gets harder. Maybe the cycle of risk feels more challenging too, because we become more aware, I think, because we become more aware of the risk and we become more aware of the gaps. Like, I don't know. We see that with the companies we work with. Like over time, they tend to be harder on themselves for the things that they're now doing a whole lot better than they were to begin with. But it's because that they've created this awareness around it. And they're like, now I know I can dial that in. And now I see the layers of gaps that we have. So I think that's part of it too.
I'm glad that resonates, because I've gone through my entrepreneurial journey too, and I've felt those like layers of risk, and it is because I'm not as good at it. Just open and honest. It's like that's a skill set I haven't had to flex as much. And so I guess, how often do you think there are what I would call fatigued entrepreneurs, whether they're on the for-profit or not-for-profit side, who are struggling with how to break out of that fatigue, or at least, and maybe it's not break out of the fatigue, because I don't think the fatigue ever goes away, but how do they feel like they can close those gaps without giving up what makes the business great? I think that's the crux of this conversation. Where does that meet how do you guys land in between those two places of fear and like fatigue?
So like you said, there's always going to be fear. There's always going to be fatigue. There's always going to be things that we don't feel prepared for. If we can find a way to manage that system of negative emotions by creating structures that help us form habits, to form behaviors that keep us from falling deeply into those things, and give us a path for how to deal with it. And then we have a system of values, and we have a guidepost or a North Star for our business. If we have those things in place, then we have somewhere that grounds us. The challenge of running a business it doesn't change. Like, it's a hard thing to do. We all love the challenge of it and struggle through the challenge of it, but that's why we've created what we did, is to form the map and the path and the belief systems and the guardrails for how we go along the journey. That's how I would answer that. And maybe also I would just say, as like a point of reassurance, like one other thing, this kind of like feeling like you're just like stepping in to that next phase and that next stage of risk, you said, Kyle, like it's challenging because it's like you don't feel equipped, you don't know. And I think half of the struggle for the business owners I've talked with is like admitting that and asking for help. Like, asking for help doesn't seem like an option, because you're like, I should know this. I should know how to do this. I should be able to do this on my own. And I've heard people say that when I've walked them through our tools. They're like, man, like I know all this stuff. And it's, yeah, but don't be ashamed that you didn't do it on your own. What's that about? Since when are we supposed to figure all of it out on our own? So I think that's part of it too, is just recognizing that even if nobody's saying it, like we're all feeling that insecurity, and we just need help with it.
I think the problem comes when, for most of a person's life, figuring it all out on their own has worked pretty damn well.
Yeah.
Maybe extraordinarily well.
Right. I'd be curious, like, how do we help those people who hold a belief that, oh, I'll just figure it out. And guess what? I have a track record. Yeah, you can tell me all day long, you should ask for help. You're like, yeah, okay, I haven't done that so far. Or I just like go read a book and I do a thing, and I don't need a coach, and I don't need this sort of stuff. I don't need an agenda. I'll just wing it. Like, my intuition served me well so far. How do we help those people without eviscerating them? Right? Because you can't shame them. Oh my gosh, how prideful do you think you're so smart as to get as far as, and whether or not we say it in that stupid way I just did, or we say it in a more sophisticated leadership jargon BS sort of way, it's what we're saying. So in your opinion, how do we help those leaders who have been very capable, very self-sufficient, come to terms with their limitations and see help as an accentuation, an augmentation, an amplification of what they've done, instead of some sort of like referendum on their limited abilities.
I think the analogy for this is like real life situation for us. Like we bought the place I'm sitting in. This is my office at our house. And this house is old. It has a lot of, everybody has home projects, right? Everyone has their list of stuff that's broken down or paint that's chipped or, doorknobs that don't work like they should. And we've been dealing with it for, since we moved in to our house. And there's always the choice of, do we take every weekend of the year and try to learn how to tile a bathroom or fix a faucet? Or, we can do that. We're capable of that. And could we come up with 10 reasons why that's a great idea? Yeah. But at the end of the day, like we've had years in our home where we look at each other on Sunday night and we're like, what have we just spent our weekend doing? We're exhausted. And we don't really know. We don't really know what we're doing. Like, what if we could get some help with this? We could use our time better. And I know that, and I say all that to say I want to be mindful that that's not everybody's option every time, right? But if we're thinking about it as an analogy for this business owner, it's, you are so good at so many things. Do you need to be good at all of those things always and forever? Is that going to move you to your highest and best use? No. Mm-hmm. So it's not about shaming someone for what they're not great at or taking it away from them. It's, what if you could give it away so that you get something back and you get to do what you do the absolute best?
Right. How do we help them get to that place and start that process? Even if they're sitting here, they're listening right now and they go 100%, McKenzie, what you say makes sense. And I agree with you. How and where do I start?
I can chime in a little bit and just maybe McKenzie, you can put a fine point on it. Oh, maybe that was Sable.
It was. She's like chewing something, but we'll figure that out later.
That'll be a surprise
Your
for
home project.
Oh my gosh.
I think what's interesting is the people, these high performers who have the capability to do all these things, but maybe not the time component or should they be doing it? They're really driven. But I think any of us who've walked this path know that we didn't get there alone. We got there with others and through others and with others. And they're probably, these people who we're talking about just sideways, they probably have a big dream and they can't get there. And they're scared to name it because then maybe they would acknowledge the failure, acknowledge that they're not getting there. And maybe is that a doorway to open in those conversations? And then I have one more big question. So I'll give you some space on that. And I have one more big question for you, McKenzie. But how would you react to that? The high performers are really scared to admit that they're not achieving their own goals and they don't know how or don't know to ask for help.
I guess the question for those people is like, how is that going to work for you in 12 months? What's it going to look like for you in 12 months or 18 months? What if nothing changes?
So you Dr. Phil them. Was that working out for you?
And you do have a great Southern accent, so it goes much better.
That's what I would ask. Is
Right
doing what you're doing now going to get you where you want to go? If it's all good, then keep going. Fine, go ahead. But if you want it to look different, we got to do something different. The wise Benj Miller once said, a system is perfectly, what is it, Kenny?
Perfectly designed to get the results it's currently delivering.
Yes.
Something along those lines.
A system.
Also, don't complain about the results you're not getting from the work you're not doing.
There's just got to be a willingness and humility to say, I don't know. I don't know. There's some humility to it, but there's just this acknowledgement that there's something more to be seen.
This is where I think Dan Sullivan's work with Who Not How.
Oh, Who Not How too.
Gap in the game, yes, but Who Not How, I think can be just the way he articulates it. I think is a graceful approach to get at what you're talking about, Kyle, which is you have a bigger dream, you're not realizing it. Dr. McKenzie, Phil, whatever, is saying, how's that working out for you? And if it's not, then we got to explore a different approach. I also think things like, and this is probably just a recency bias since I just completed the certification, but like the 6 types of working genius of just understanding your gifts in working, right? Stepping outside of, I did one thing they said there in the certification, that Working Genius is 80% productivity tool and 20% personality assessment. And typically high performers love productivity. So figure out what part of the productivity you're really good at and then hire, because, they said well-rounded teams will outperform well-rounded leaders any day of the week.
Wow, I love that. All right, McKenzie, the last question, and then we can wrap her up, is it's a tough question, so I apologize in advance. You built System and Soul. How are you keeping the soul in System and Soul?
I thought you were going to ask me another hot dog question. Like
I really wanted to. I really was thinking.
I was
really thinking about it. I mean, like, how do you feel about the Oxford comma? Right, that would have been a great one too.
Oh, that's easy.
Is it?
Yeah. Okay.
Our next intro question.
Yes.
I'm going to change our Facebook relationship after this. It's complicated.
I asked the question because I think it's so relevant, because what we talked about is building something intensely personal that we have to show it, and you guys talk about it. And I think there's a reason you guys have to show it too. So I'd love to hear your perspective on how you guys are doing that.
I'd be happy to share. I think I want to say in all humility, I don't think that we're doing anything perfectly. And I feel every day like I figure something out and then I learn 2 things that I don't know. So there's like this balance, I think, of just, I want to state with full transparency, like we are on the journey with everybody else. Benj, especially as founders and partners running this business, we have to be dedicated to what I mentioned earlier, the ever evolving process of becoming inwardly sound and others focused, and just being very honest with ourselves about where we're at in that journey. So it starts with this personal identity piece. And I think that's where the soul begins. That's the roots. We have a value in our business that's stay grounded. So we stay grounded in ourselves, and then we stay grounded to our roadmap, which is our strategic plan. The other thing that, this is probably recency as well, Kenny, it's something that it's come up more in the last couple of weeks, and I'm reminded that the trust and accountability in a team are formed in a one-to-one basis. So I don't create a team. It's not McKenzie and my team of, 6 people that create trust. It's me and each one of my team members that create trust and create that accountability to get things done and have a healthy relationship. So I think that's another piece of it. It is my job every single day that I log onto my computer to build trust and build accountability with my team. And it happens in the smallest of ways. But I think that is incredibly important. And then I would say, I mentioned this a minute ago, but the third thing is we continuously aim to stay aligned to our roadmap. And our roadmap is not just like a series of numbers and goals that we want to achieve in the time frame that we have set out on there. It's like a living, breathing document for who we want to be, why we do what we do. We talk about it all the time. We reference it for every decision that we make. It's just this practice that I think organizationally it's become a part of how we think and operate, and it keeps the soul aligned. So there's a couple of layers to that. I think there's the personal soul, there's a soul of the team, and then there's a soul of the business.
It's beautiful. Thank you for being on. We're very grateful and Kenny, I'm glad you showed up.
I'm glad Kenny did too. I don't get to see Kenny enough.
Sometimes I'm around, but yes, good to see and be seen.